If you're looking to be more intentional with your next 40 plus years, honor the remaining time that you're gifted, create more of what you want, and enjoy the process, then regularly deploying these 3 questions is for you. There's a Tony Robbins quote that says, "Quality questions create a quality life. Successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better answers." Let's get better answers flowing to you on autopilot. You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 222. Change your life with these 3 questions. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to the podcast today. I'm so happy that you're here and listening. I think you'll take some practically useful things away from today's episode. How is your sleep? Was it helpful to learn about the 3 different drivers of sleep, or sleeplessness, as the case may be? I hope that if you know anyone with insomnia, now you know that it's a fixable problem and you can pass on some of the resources that can get them sleeping well again. Today, we're going to talk about 3 life-changing questions you can get in the habit of asking yourself regularly to create an extraordinary life. Okay, the 3rd question, well, we're working backward here, I guess I should say that. I learned from Steve Chandler in his book, Creator. He said that his life coach, Steve Hardison, used to ask him 2 questions over and over again during the time that they worked together. Quote, "When I described a problematic situation in my life, he would listen carefully and then say, 'Okay, given that that's the situation, what would you like to create?' Notice that it was not, 'How do you want to solve it?' as if the problem itself had all the power, as if the problem were a bomb we had to carefully disarm. He never saw the problem as having the power in the situation. He always saw creativity as having all the power. And together, we didn't really have to solve anything because we didn't need to. What we created made the problems fade from all relevance." End quote. That's pretty good, right? Can you see a use for this question in your life? When you face a problem or difficult circumstance, how do you approach it? Do you feel like it's a bomb that needs to be diffused? That the clock is ticking, and if you don't cut the right wire, is it the red one or the blue one? Oh no, my hand is shaking. Or your bus's speed drops below 50 miles per hour? Life as you know it will be over? I think it's easy and natural to give all the power to the problem or the situation, to think that all of your resources need to go toward thinking of ways to fix the bad situation that you're in. Maybe you got bad news at a recent doctor's checkup, or you took time out of your workday to make an appointment, sit in a waiting room, sit in the second waiting room, then have your concerns dismissed or your hopes for treatment plans refused. It could be anything, an injury, your favorite workout class being canceled, you being canceled. That's still a thing, right? Is cancel culture still a thing? I don't know anything at all about what's trending. I just barely heard about barrel jeans. Do you have some? I don't. So, whatever difficult or problematic circumstance exists in your life, how would your approach be different if instead of seeing the problem as having all the power, you saw creativity as having all the power? Okay, do you remember the question? Okay, given that that's the situation, what would you like to create? That's the question. It doesn't ignore reality, but it shifts your perspective from, oh no, how do I get out of this bad circumstance and back to status quo, to, okay, how do I still create something new and wonderful that drives my life forward? Steve Chandler explains that he sees creativity and the life force as the same thing. So if you deploy this question to honor your creativity, you're honoring your life force. That feels way better than trying to fix something stupid, unfair, or possibly scary that should never have happened to you. You haven't had a good night's sleep in 10 months. You hate your new boss. You've never been consistent at healthy meal prep, and you have no idea what to do for resistance training once you get to the gym, so you feel ridiculous. Okay, given that that's the situation, what would you like to create? That's a good question, right? Okay, now on to question number 2. So back to the second part of that Steve Chandler quote that I read earlier. He goes on to say, and the second question he'd always ask me would appear whenever it didn't look like I could do some scary thing I needed to do. Instead of telling me what I needed to do, he would always ask me, who do you need to be? Because he always knew, and I learned through practice, that I could create that being. I could create who I needed to be. That's all we ever do anyway. End quote. Have you learned through practice that you are able to create the being that you need to be to accomplish what you want? So much better than making a list of all the things you need to do is to figure out one thing. Who do I need to be? Then when you become her, she effortlessly does all the things. It's intuitive and easy. She doesn't do it with that needy, graspy, desperate energy. She doesn't doubt or unknowingly hold herself back. We're always making ourselves up as we go anyway, so why not make yourself someone who kicks butt and takes names? I think that's your true self anyway, the real you, the one who isn't held down by a nonsense upper limit. In Atomic Habits, which is all about the step-by-step of what to do, James Clear says, the first step is not what or how, but who. You need to know who you want to be. Otherwise, your quest for change is like a boat without a rudder. End quote. So as great as to-dos and habits and life hacks are, your boat is rudderless and aimless unless you know who you need to be. Let's say you're that same person who can't sleep, hates her boss, has never been consistent at healthy meal prep, and feels ridiculous at the gym because she has no idea how to do resistance training. If what you want to create is a life full of days where you wake up well-rested and excited about the day ahead, and you love your daily routines, and you're proud of your ability to do hard things now that set you up for an easier future, who do you need to be? Who is the woman who enjoys her daily tasks and habits? Who knows exactly what to do in the weight room and trusts that she'll sleep well every night? Does she have a name that's different than your name? If you're trying to make a big identity shift in one area, I think it's useful to think of the old you and the new you as different people with different names, because the best way to change the result you're getting from your actions is to change your operating signal, the energy and expectations and beliefs and emotions behind the actions that you're taking. And that comes from your identity, who you believe you are. Who do you believe you are? Okay, and the question that I think is most life-changing, if you can get in the habit of asking yourself this all the time, like multiple times a day, is something I heard from someone named Walter Green. And when I heard it, I was like, oh. I had never really heard of him before or since, but he's an interesting guy who started a movement called Say It Now, all about acknowledging the importance we have in one another's lives and expressing gratitude for each other while we're still alive. Like a funeral-esque celebration of life, but everyone's still alive. It makes your life much richer. Walter says that he learned this question from someone named Fred Jervis at the Center for Constructive Change in like the 80s or something. He describes it as a process of thinking that has changed every single day of his life since. Pretty powerful. He said ever since he heard this, he doesn't think the way everyone else thinks anymore. He always thinks in reverse. Pretty cool. It seems to me like if you want to get different results than most people, it would be useful to think differently than most people. Walter says he never asks, what should we do? Or what should we talk about? Or what problems should we address, etc. Because that's thinking forward. He said he asks himself for every important thing he ever does, if this, fill in the blank, were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for me to know that my time was well spent, or for us to know that our time was well spent? He does this for every important thing he does in his life, including personal interactions. A father-son weekend, dinner with his wife, a podcast interview, a work meeting, a doctor's appointment, everything. Can you see the power in the question? He said he's gotten so in the habit of thinking it, like for 40 years now, that it's really easy and it's just the way his mind works now. It seems to me like it might take some mental effort to remind yourself to ask this question before you do things and then to pause to think of the answer. But once you keep at it for a while, it would become second nature. And you wouldn't have to actually think all the words because it is kind of a long sentence. Just the actual question. If this class I'm teaching were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for me to know that my message came across? If this lifting session at the gym were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for me to know I worked my muscles optimally? If this day were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for me to know I drove my life forward in some way? If this girls' night out were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for us to know we made some meaningful connections? If this meeting with my financial advisor were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for me to feel like I understand all the things I need to do to be on track for retirement? If this deep work time block were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for me to know I did my very best work? I like the idea of spelling out how you know whether your time was well spent on something before you do it. Even though we intellectually know that time is our most precious resource, we all tend to squander it a lot. So I love that getting in the habit of asking yourself this question forces you to consider what qualifies as time well spent. So hopefully you'll get so in the habit of thinking in reverse that you'll intuitively ask yourself, if this binge-watching session is really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for me to know that my time was well spent? Maybe you'll have 4 unforgettable hours of laughter with your otherwise withdrawn teenager. That's not time wasted. But maybe you'll realize that what you really want is to be able to wind down from an emotionally taxing day, and this TV series isn't the best way to do that. Either way, being really aware of what you want to create and how you're choosing to spend your time up-levels your life. It infuses intentionality into everything you do, and not everything has to be serious. It just helps you focus your efforts in a way that honors the urgency of time passing without getting all crazy about it. And I think being intentional about having fun is an important thing to do. What do you think? Could this question help you spend your time more intentionally and make you more likely to get the results you want from life? I think so. Forcing yourself to understand what you want to have happen as a result of everything you do helps you clarify your desires and your life's purpose and spend your time creating what you want to create. So I hope you'll stop asking yourself, what should we do? Or what should we talk about? Or where should we go? And start thinking, what do I want to have happen by the end of this? It infuses more purpose into everything, and the purpose can totally be pleasure or fun. If this meal planning session were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it to know that my time was well spent? Maybe the answer is that you never have to plan your meals again. How could you make that happen? Maybe the answer is that you get to do it more often because you love it so much, or that you discover a new way that minimizes the messy kitchen aftermath or time spent shopping or chopping. It helps you figure out what matters to you and then live in alignment with your values. Living in alignment with your values is the real secret to happiness. In big things and small, huge spiritual values, life purpose type values, and also little things like maybe you're so much happier if you have a few minutes every day that you can just pet your cat or put your feet up and read a book or something. I've been unpicking and resewing a bunch of my clothes lately to try to make them more of what I want them to be, and this question helped me realize that I don't actually care that much about whether the clothes end up perfect in the end, which I thought I did at the beginning. So that's good because I'm not a good seamstress at all. I realized that I wanted an opportunity to be creative and have to think through the geometry of the clothes and the way different fabrics behave and to have fun learning something new more than to end up with a perfect result. Then when I mess up, which I inevitably do, it's not nearly as frustrating as it was before I asked myself this question. I enjoyed the TV show I was half watching more. I gave myself credit for doing something I've never done before, and my pants still fit way better, and the twists I put in my t-shirts make me smile. I recently took my 15 and 17-year-old boys shopping, which we almost never do, and this question helped me realize that what was important was not whether we found all of the perfect items at the perfect price for every need they had on the list, but that we spent time together and talked as we explored options. It helped me realize that it was time well spent whether we got everything we were looking for or not. What upcoming situations can you use this question on? A work project? Household chores? A networking conversation? A date? A training plan? It works for everything. Thank you so much for being here today. You are fabulous. I hope these 3 questions will become a part of the way you think about everything that happens in your life. Do you remember them all? Number 3 was, given that this is the situation, what do I want to create? Number 2 was, who do I need to be to get what I want? And number 1 was, if blank were really successful, what would have happened by the end of it for me to know that my time was well spent? Next week, we're going to talk about some overlooked risks of taking hormone replacement therapy. Until then, ask yourself better questions and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.